everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Hawk Blogger. A little bit of a different backdrop today. If you don't already know, the Northwest got hit by what's called a bomb cyclone. I feel like they are inventing these things every year. A few years ago, it was an atmospheric river that became the thing. By the way, we had one of those as well. And power is out everywhere. Our house is without power. Thankfully, we have a generator, but the internet's not working, and we're in a cell dead zone, so there is no way for me to broadcast from the house. Hopefully this is coming through for all of you. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Hopefully you can see me and it's not super laggy. This is tethered to my cell phone. I tried to find some place that had decent cell reception, grabbed a park bench and tried to get set up. First drove to my parents' apartment to see if they had better cell reception, but they didn't. Drove all the way back. So it's been a little bit of a morning. Apologies for the delay and thank you for sticking with me. If you have not given the show a like and click subscribe, I don't know if you're going to find a better reason to do so than the fact that nothing can stop this show every single morning. Your Seahawks fix 7 days a week, 365 days a year. This is, I think, I want to say episode 241. Let me double check that. 241. 241 straight days of Seahawks content for all of you. And I couldn't miss it. I definitely got a few grumbles from my lovely wife, who also has to get to work. So I will probably not be able to stay on as long as I normally would. But wanted to get out here, do a little bit of an update relative to, or a little bit of a show relative to this game against the Cardinals coming up, because it's a huge, huge game. Interestingly, Wednesday is usually a busy day at the VMAC. We go down, we talk to Mike McDonald, the locker room's open, we talk to a few other players. The VMAX, I'm pretty sure it doesn't have power right now. So I don't know what that's going to mean in terms of their schedule today and whether we're going to be talking with the coach and everyone else. This power outage is expected to last multiple days. So this could last into tomorrow. So bear with me. I did cancel the Big Ray's Rewind show that was immediately after this. Ray is without power. And wanted to let him off the hook so he could focus on his family and his needs. And Real Hawk Talk tonight, I think, is probably going to be canceled, but we'll see. We have a few more hours, obviously, during the day to figure out what's going on, and I'll update everybody. So the best way to know if I'm going to be live and if there's going to be content is to click the subscribe button, click the little bell to get notified when we go live, and you will find out when and if we are live on this channel. So with all that said, let's talk a little bit about this matchup between the Seahawks and the Cardinals. I wrote my tale of the tape last night over at hawkblogger.com. You can find it there. I will be sharing it with you today, and there's a lot to talk about with this matchup. It's a really interesting game and an interesting contest for the Seahawks because what I see is like kind of a perfect matchup, not in the sense that it's perfectly advantageous for the Seahawks, but the fact that this is a really good team that they're going to be facing. And so, sorry, you're going to see something weird as I try to add something to the stage. I'll get this figured out in a second. But the Arizona Cardinals are an extremely solid football team. They are not a great football team. They're not a dominant football team, but they are really solid in all facets of the game. They're a good run team. They have a quarterback who is not just a scrambler like a Brock Purdy, but a home run threat as a runner out of the backfield. He's a decent passer. I don't think he's as good of a passer as many people do. Josh Cashman, if you're listening to me. I do not think he's as good of a passer as many people do, but he is, he did get to be the #1 overall pick for a reason. You've got good receivers, young receivers. And then on defense, you've got a really rugged run defense and a good special teams. I think the pass defense is where there's a little bit of weakness. We'll talk about that. They've got some good safety play, but their cornerback play is their Achilles heel. We'll talk about Garrett Williams. He's their only, I think, solid corner, and he plays their slot corner position. So, yeah, it's just the reason I really like this matchup is because this season is not about winning a Super Bowl. I've said that from the beginning. That's not what the focus is. The season's about figuring out who the Seahawks are and what they can be down the road and how they build an identity toward that. And with Mike Macdonald as the head coach, one of the key things you want to see as part of that identity is really good defense and really physical, tough play. There's not a better team for the Seahawks to do that against than the Cardinals right now. They just did it against the 49ers. They did it against the Rams the week before. This is the third straight divisional game. You get each of these different teams and their different strengths and weaknesses, but all of them represent a challenge in terms of how rugged you can be, how tough and physical you can be as a team. So I just love this challenge for the Seahawks. I also love the fact that they are coming off a win that has them probably as confident as they've been all year. Yes, they were 3-0, but I think they knew they probably weren't as good as the record indicated at that point. The coaching staff certainly knew that. And so now I think the coaching staff is feeling a little more confident, especially on defense. I think the players are feeling like they've got this figured out, because when Mike Macdonald talks about stacking wins, that's not just about victories in the win column. He's talking about each and every rep that you're going to take in practice, in a game, every quarter, every series, every game. And the Seahawks, if you think about it, have just stacked so many winning reps on the defensive side of the ball over the last two games that those guys can't help but feel more confident when they're getting out there. And one of the things I talked to Coach Macdonald about earlier this week, I happened to notice when I was just scouring, looking for, different insights and different things that were changing with this team, they had their fastest get off of the year, meaning that their ability to get off the snap on defense and the difference between when the ball was snapped and when they started to move was the fastest it had been all year. I also noticed that their separation in coverage was the smallest it had been all year, meaning that they were tightly covering their receivers better than they ever have this year. And if you see some of the 49ers and analysts out there, they're tweeting out video of how Brock Purdy really didn't have anywhere to throw, and was it his arm or was it the fact that he had no one open? And then they're getting mad at their receivers because their receivers just couldn't get separation. The reason I'm bringing all of this up is that when you start to understand your assignment on defense, you understand what your teammates' assignments are, you trust them to do their assignment, you can start to play faster. You can start to play more aggressively. You can start to just play instinctively. And I think that's what we're starting to see from this defense. I think we're going to see step after step after step of them moving forward and being more of a playmaking crew than they've been. So that's why I really like the opportunity and the challenge that this game represents for the Seahawks defensively. Offensively, the Seahawks offense is scuffling. It absolutely is. It's trying to find its way. The run game is pretty much a disaster and not getting anything done. This is a good Cardinals run defense. Their safeties are good run defenders. Their linemen are good run defenders. So it's not going to necessarily be easy sledding to run the ball. But one of the things we'll talk about with the Cardinals, another Achilles heel of them that they have, is they are 30th. I think I'll double check when I show you my screen. 30th in the NFL in pressure rate. The last time the Seahawks faced a defense that ranked that low in pressure rate was when they faced the Falcons, who ranked 32nd. And you saw Geno Smith had his best passer rating of the season, 110.8 in that game. And The other two times they faced teams that were even close to 30th in pressure rate were the New England Patriots and the Detroit Lions. Yes, the Detroit Lions, even with Aiden Hutchinson, have been one of the lower pressure rate teams on the season. In those two games, Geno Smith threw for 10 yards against the Patriots, had one of his best games of the year. And against the Lions, he threw for almost 400 yards. So I think that there is an opportunity here for the passing game, even if the Seahawks don't become a different offense and start to figure out how to run the ball or mix things better. There's an opportunity in this game for them to put points on the board and to move the ball. The Cardinals, part of the reason that their numbers look as good as they do is because two things. One, they are been very good in the red zone. So they give up a lot of yards. They're like the quintessential bend but don't break defense. They give up yards. Greg Olsen kept calling the Mike McDonald defense bend but don't break. That's not right, because the Seahawks lead the league in 3 and outs. The Seahawks, they allowed 277 yards to the 49ers. That's not bending a lot. The Cardinals are one of the lower teams ranking, from a ranking perspective, in terms of yards allowed. But when you get into the red zone, they have managed to keep teams out of the end zone. And so that has led to fewer points than they probably should have allowed. So that's one reason why their defensive numbers are a little better than you might expect. The other reason is the last 2 games they played, they allowed less than 10 points, 9 points and 6 points. And they absolutely dominated their opponents. And so that's really great. But remember when the Seahawks had the best defense in the league through 3 weeks and everyone said, who did you play? The same applies for the Cardinals in their last 2 games. Their last 2 games that were so dominant from a defensive perspective were against the Chicago Bears, who subsequently fired their offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, and against the New York Jets, who just fired their GM after firing their head coach and have been an absolute disaster on offense. So I don't think that those defensive performances are as impressive as the numbers would indicate because of the opponent. I do always believe, I say this when the Seahawks do it and I say it in this situation, holding teams under 10 points, holding them to 200 yards or less is impressive no matter who the opponent is. So they are playing well. I don't want to give you the indication that this is a fraudulent defense. I just don't think that they are their numbers, I think, are a little inflated right now because of who they played the last 2 games. The other thing I'll say is in that Chicago game, you know how I said that their pressure rate is 30th in the NFL? They had 36 pressures in the Bears game. I want to say 15, I'll double check because I have it written in the article, but I think 15 different Cardinals registered a pressure. Let me make sure that's right. So hold on, I got to check this and then I will tell you if I am right on that. Where is it? So they piled up 36 pressures, 13 players recorded a pressure against Chicago. There's only 11 players on defense. So that is remarkable. That's not something you see very often. And my point there is they're still 30th in pressure rate. So that's how bad they've been in applying pressure to the quarterback. You want to guess who their leading pressure player is? Who has the most pressures for the Cardinals defense this year? I'm going to give you a second to guess. I'm going to look at, see if there's any super chats. We do have Brian Masterson has gifted 5 Hawk Blogger memberships. That is very nice of you, Brian. Thank you for doing that. If you get one of these free memberships, consider giving one. And also, I'm sitting out here in the cold. Appreciate any support anyone wants to provide. Definitely appreciate it. And thank you, Brian, for showing some support that way. Yes, Amy Holmes, one of our members, has guessed the correct answer. LJ Collier leads the Cardinals in pressures with 21. Now, to give you context of how small of a number that is, the Seahawks have 5 players with 27 pressures or more. So the Seahawks have 5 players that have at least 6 more pressures than the Cardinals' leading player has their pressure total being 21. So that is the state of that pass rush. Now, there are some things to be aware of that could help that pass rush for the Cardinals. They made a good move before the trade deadline. They acquired Baron Browning, a defensive end, an edge player, an edge rusher from the Denver Broncos. And he played a few snaps against the Jets. So he's got a few snaps in. He will play more snaps for sure after the bye week against the Seahawks. He is a high-quality edge rusher. He is young. He is a guy that, for the Broncos, there were a lot of folks that thought Baron Browning might become an elite edge rusher this year. He has been hampered by injuries in past years, but just basically there were other players on the Broncos, like Jonathan Cooper and others, that really have stepped up, and so they felt comfortable moving on from Baron Browning, who's going to be a free agent at the end of this year. He's going to help their pass rush. The other thing to look out for is their first-round pick, Darius Robinson, has missed the whole season. He is expected to practice, and they think he might make his debut this week. He is a defensive end, but can also play inside. We don't know how they're going to utilize him because he hasn't played. So you're getting some additional reinforcements for that pass rush for the Cardinals, and that should help. Now, I still just want to caution, like, this has been a very, very bad pass rushing team. So, and I also would say Baron Browning, as much as I think he is a very good pass rusher, he played against the Seahawks in week 1 and had 1 pressure. Like, he was a non-factor for the most part. So I don't think he's necessarily like unlocks everything, but new faces and new places can mean some different outcomes for people, and we'll see if that's the case with Baron Browning. This is a huge game from the standings perspective, obviously. Seahawks are 1 game behind the Cardinals. If they win this game, they take the division lead. Now, of course, it depends on what happens with the 49ers, who I think are playing the Packers in Green Bay. Depends on what happens with the Rams, who are playing the Eagles, I believe, in Los Angeles. But there's a decent chance that the Seahawks could take over first place in the division and then have their destiny in their own hands again. 1 game could do that. Now, they're going to play these Cardinals again in 2 weeks. So they play this week, then they go to New York, and then they come home to play Arizona. Sorry, then they go to New York, and then they go to Arizona. I'm going to have a busy travel schedule. We are flying to New York after Thanksgiving with the family, and I will be at that game. I'll fly back, and then we'll fly out to Arizona to watch that game. So a lot of back and forth for the Seahawks. That'll be challenging. It's tough to beat a team 2 times in 3 weeks, like 2 times in a season, let alone 2 times in 3 weeks. Also tough to do it if your second game is in their stadium. But I think the Seahawks have a legitimate chance to win these next 3 games. And if they do, I think the season absolutely is a totally different story than what it has been to this point. So let me see if I can share a few things on my screen. Now, this is not my normal setup. I've only got my laptop here, so I'm going to have to share my full screen so I can show you guys a couple things. And then I'm going to have to switch. So you're going to see something here. You're going to see a little mirroring, and then hopefully I'm not seeing the chat anymore, so you guys can say whatever you want. Hopefully you guys are seeing this. I'm going to trust that you are seeing this. So this is Tail of the Tape. You can find this at hawkblogger.com. Reference, I put a lot of work into this, a lot of details that you might hopefully not find anywhere else. A couple things I want to highlight here. Whoops, let me brush, screen brush, there we go. Allow. Let me see if screen brush, there we go. So, a couple things here. I'm going to zoom in for you. Jonah Williams. So Jonah Williams is expected to come off injured reserve this week. He is a free agent tackle that they signed. They spent a lot of money on to play right tackle. So he is his 21-day window to be activated ends this week. They have cut a player, another tackle. Everyone's assuming that's opening a roster spot for them to activate Jonah Williams today to be part of their starting lineup for the first time, basically since the first week of the season. Now, on one hand, he's like, oh man, that sucks. They get their best right tackle back. Maybe. Kelvin Beachum has been playing right tackle and playing very well. I don't think he's allowed a pressure in a few games. Has been a good right tackle. So I think Jonah Williams is good, and I clearly think he is better. But I don't know that it's much of an upgrade for what they were seeing before. But they are getting him back. I talked about Darius Robinson. I talked about Baron Browning. Sean Murphy-Bunting. He had been missed a couple of games. He is a cornerback for them. He is back in the lineup, and that has meant fewer snaps for rookie Max Melton. He is the, I think, brother or cousin of Bo Melton. I think the brother. And he is a second-round pick. He's not been playing very well. And so Sean Murphy-Bunting is back. He's not been playing very well either, but he is added to their lineup. A couple things to be aware of from the Seahawks perspective in terms of who's in. The Seahawks are going to be without D. Williams and Laviska Shenault, almost certainly. Do not know what they will do at returner. They played Kenny McIntosh and Cody White there during the 49ers game. That was likely because those were the guys they had available. Those might be the same guys they use again. They may choose to go a different direction. Punt returns, I don't even know if they had a punt return. I think they didn't have any returners back the one time that the 49ers punted after D. Williams was hurt. So that's something to watch out for. Keep an eye out for Noah Fant. He has been out for 3 weeks already. This would be 4 weeks if he's out for this. And they chose not to put him on IR, so that makes me wonder if he's ready potentially to come back. But it's a groin injury. Those things are tricky, so we'll see if he is back this week. All right, so that is from a personnel perspective. Let's talk about DVOA. Again, you can get this information from ftnfantasy.com. Use promo code HBAM, gets you 15% off. That is less than $8 a month. I'm a subscriber, love it, use it every day, and I 100% think you should be too, and would enjoy the Discord channel, all the DVOA data, all the Stats Hub data. All right, so if you look at DVOA, as it was the case even against the 49ers, the Seahawks do not have a lot of advantages from a DVOA perspective. I think it is worth calling out that the Seahawks are a little bit of a different team, especially defensively, the last 2 weeks than they've been. On the flip side, they kind of were a more powerful offensive team to start the year, and so you could make the argument that they are overranked, like more highly ranked than they should be on offense. In any case, the Cardinals, as you can see, there's not a lot of really impressive rankings here. This is their only top 10 ranking is their pass offense is 7th in DVOA. But generally, they're like a top 13 team on both sides of the ball, roughly around there. So they're good. They're not great. They are interestingly good at defending wide receiver ones, and I don't exactly understand how. I'm guessing that this is safety help. Budda Baker is obviously a great safety. Jalen Thompson, I think, is a very underrated, very good safety. They got a rookie safety, Darian Thomas, I'm forgetting his name. But in any event, he's played reasonably well. Jalen Thompson did miss the last game before the bye with an ankle injury. I'm assuming he'll be back, but I don't know the extent of that ankle injury, so that's something to monitor. But I'm guessing with number one receivers, they are giving additional safety help, helping the corners, and maybe that is limiting those wide receiver ones. But they have struggled against wide receiver twos and wide receiver threes. They rank 19th in DVOA against wide receiver twos. They rank 30th in DVOA against wide receiver threes. Look out for Tyler Lockett in this game. Yes, JSN's been going off. Yes, DK Metcalf, I think, is going to have a good game. I think Tyler Lockett is set to have a big game against the Cardinals. I think the matchup really works well for him. I think he is going to be able to find some opening. I think Geno will take advantage of that. I think JSN probably has the toughest matchup of the three receivers because, as I said, Garrett Williams is a good nickel corner. I don't think he's, going to be harder than the guys he's been going against, but relative to the other corners and the other matchups, I think he is the toughest matchup for the Seahawks. And then DK, even though this is ranking against wide receiver ones is really good, I just don't see who they have that's going to guard DK Metcalf. I think he could have a big game as well. I really like that matchup. I want to call out as well, the Seahawks have really made some strides in their defense of wide receiver ones. They're up to 5th in DVOA against wide receiver ones. I think Reek Woolen is playing so much better than people give him credit for. I know he had a couple rough games, a couple rough plays, I would even say, but he's doing his job. And these other rankings are improving. The wide receiver 3 for the Seahawks had been really low. It is climbing slowly. I think Josh Jobe is doing a good job there. And I think we're going to see, Devin Witherspoon's doing a good job as well. One other piece to be aware of, the Seahawks 18th in DVOA against defending tight ends. Trey McBride is one of the best receiving tight ends in football. He will be the first real test at tight end for this defense, this new middle of the defense for the Seahawks. How will Ernest Jones, Tyrese Knight, how will Kobe Bryant do against them? One thing as far as that goes, I am interested to see if the Seahawks activate Rayshon Jenkins. He may be back this week, and I know people are like, oh, he was awful when he was playing. Well, everybody was awful during that stretch. Rayshon Jenkins was arguably the best player on the field in week 1. He was everywhere. And he is a veteran, and I still think he is very talented and very physical. And if you add him back to a defense that is now playing this soundly, I think he's going to be a really nice addition. And given the choice between him and Ty Okada, who got most of the snaps at third safety last time, I will take Rayshon Jenkins every time. So keep an eye out for Rayshon Jenkins. But Trey McBride's a matchup here to really keep an eye on, and I think could be a tough one for the Seahawks. All right, moving on. Let's take a look at the Seahawks on offense. So as you can see, there are some advantages for the Seahawks in this game offensively. One of the things that you've got here is the Cardinals. Whoops. I do not want that to show. Go away. That was not showing before. Sorry, folks. Give me 1 second. Hide screen brush. There we go. Now you guys know what I use for my drawing on the screen. Really cool little tool. So the Cardinals rank 21st in the NFL in yards allowed. That's what I'm talking about. Then they're 12th in points allowed. How is that possible? Well, they're 13th in the NFL in red zone defense. So that's a big, big part of it. Interestingly, they are 31st in the NFL in third down defense. Now, the Seahawks have been facing third and long. Every team is going to look better defensively when the offense you're facing is 3rd and 8 plus. But the Cardinals have really struggled on third down over this time, and I think a lot of that is because their coverage is not great. Their linebackers are also not great, especially in coverage. So I think that there's opportunity in the middle of the field, especially to get some wins there. You will see that even though the Seahawks are not great on the ground, the Cardinals are not great from a run defense perspective. They are 19th in the NFL in rushing yards allowed. They are 21st in the NFL in yards per rush. They are 26th in rush EPA. So I consider them to be a pretty impressive run defense. One of the things to know about them, and let me see if I've got this written down here. Oh my gosh, it's starting to rain. I did not plan on that. If that's going to happen, folks, I'm going to probably have to wrap the show because I cannot have my equipment get wet. Let me do this for a second. I'm going to try to cover things. Unbelievable. All right, let me let me try to cover my laptop for a second, at least get through a couple more things before I wrap. Part of what went on with the rushing defense for the Cardinals is that they had allowed 130 plus rushing yards in 5 of the first 6 games, but they've allowed 79 or less in 3 of the last 4. So that's something just to know, that their rush defense has definitely taken a step forward. They seem to be really doing better there. Other things to be aware of, they are pretty good at limiting explosive passes. I'm not going to be able to show you this on screen because I can't do 3 things. I don't have 3 hands, but something to pay attention to. And you can see the big advantages in the pass yards, yards per attempt, and completion rate. Defensively, I want to call out a few things here defensively. So the Seahawks, defensively, I mean, look at all the red. This is not a great picture, certainly. And the thing I would mainly raise here is that the Seahawks defense from the past 2 weeks is very different than the Seahawks defense the rest of the year. The Seahawks defense, for example, rush EPA, were 26th in rush EPA from week 8 and earlier, from weeks 1 to week 8 is an easier way to say that. The last 2 games, they are ranked 6th in the NFL in rush EPA and rush success rate as well. So their run defense is completely different than it's been. You guys know that. You've been watching. But, when you look at this, you see 27th in rushing yards, 25th in yards per rush, 21st in rush EPA. That looks bad. James Conner is, to me, the absolute key to this game. Everyone's going to talk about Kyler Murray. People will talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride. I think all those guys obviously really matter. But for me, James Conner is the heartbeat of that Cardinals team overall. And in the games where he has gone over 100 scrimmage yards, they win. When he's held under 100 scrimmage yards, they're 1-3. And I think the Seahawks have the chance to do it. He is a battering ram. He has not been necessarily getting a lot of yards after contact, but his offensive line has been excellent in run blocking. And so the Seahawks this is like this fun test to see if they are tough enough to really just keep that line of scrimmage tight against James Conner. Because if you hold down James Conner and you force Kyler Murray to pass the ball more, then I think you're in a much better situation. I think the coverage that the Seahawks have, the secondary that they have, is better than better than most that they're going to face, and I think is playing with a lot of confidence right now. So James Conner to me is the key. You got to limit James Conner. The next key is watch out for Kyler Murray as a runner. So he is, like I said at the beginning, he's not just a scrambler, he is a home run threat. When he gets out on the edge, he can just go the whole way. So those 2 things, I think, are the biggest areas of concern or awareness for the Seahawks defensively. Marvin Harrison Jr. has not been that great so far. I'm not saying he's bad, but he just has not. He's had a disappointing rookie season. I like Michael Wilson. I think he's a good receiver. I don't think he's great. He's the kind of guy that will make a few plays. He's like I wouldn't say a poor man's Jawan Jennings, but he's kind of like that type of receiver. And then Trey McBride. Trey McBride, I think, I would say between the 3 of them, McBride is the biggest receiving concern as a threat for the Seahawks in this game. So we'll see if the Seahawks with Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight and the safeties are able to limit Trey McBride. Last thing I will show you here, let's see if this is going to work, is special teams wise. This is a good, solid special teams unit for the Cardinals. It's a good one for the Seahawks. One thing to be aware of is the Cardinals rank 31st in the NFL in kickoff returns allowed. Now, you're missing your 2 kick returners, so I don't know if the Seahawks will be able to take advantage of that, but it is worth knowing that they have struggled in covering kickoffs. So that's something to monitor. All right, folks, I'm going to wrap there as the rain continues to fall. If you haven't already, please give the show a like, click subscribe. Please consider joining as a patron. Look at the commitment here in the rain, in the park. I would appreciate that. Patreon.com/HawkBlogger. Become a member, the YouTube member. Link is in the description of the video. Head on over to ftnfantasy.com. Use promo code HBAM. Gets you all the fantasy and NFL insights you could ever want. Would appreciate all of that. And thank you for the super chat. Umbrella Bucks. Thank you for that. Reflect the Sun. All right, everybody. I'm Brian M. Adler. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Hawk Blogger. And this has been episode 241 of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care, y'all.